All right, let's jump right in. We're taught to see the world in pretty simple terms, right? Something's either true or false, on or off, yes or no. But what if that's only half the story? Today, we're going to explore a completely different way of looking at reality, one that actually embraces all the tension and constant change that really defines our world. And that brings us to the big question for today. What if all that contradiction we try to smooth over isn't a mistake? What if it's not a logical flaw, but the actual engine driving everything forward? We're going to treat it as the fundamental force behind, everything, from tiny particles all the way up to our own thoughts. So, first up, we've got to move beyond just true or false. Look, our classical logic, the whole it can't be A and not A at the same time thing, it's brilliant. It's fantastic for building computers, for anything static. But the real world, it almost never holds still. It's this nonstop flow of dynamic, energetic tension. Just think about it for a second. A light switch is either on or it's off. Super simple. But what about a feeling, or a new idea, or even a living cell? They don't just exist in an on or off state. They're always in a state of becoming, a constant dance between opposing forces. We really need a new kind of logic that can actually handle this both-and reality. So how do we start to picture this? Well, that brings us to our main idea for today, the universal tug of war. To make this all feel really intuitive, let's imagine that everything, and I mean everything in the universe, is part of a constant cosmic tug of war. This tension, this fundamental pull between opposites, that's the engine of reality. Okay, so let's set up our little game here. On one side of the rope, you've got an element. We'll just call it E. For our example, let's make it activity. And on the other side, pulling against it, is its necessary opposite, its anti-element, which we can call not E. For us, that's going to be rest. Now, the key thing to get is that activity and rest are a team. They're an inseparable pair. You literally can't have one without the other. All right, section 3, 3 states of being. So we've got our players, activity and rest, in a tug of war. But how does this game actually play out? Well, at any given moment, each of these players can be in one of 3 basic states. It's all about describing what they're doing with their energy. And these 3 states are actually super simple. First, you've got actualized, or A. This is easy. It just means the player is on, actively pulling the rope and expressing its full force. Second, there's potentialized, or P. Think of this as on standby. The player is being suppressed, sure, but it's holding its force in reserve. It hasn't gone anywhere. And third, this is the magic one, the T state. This is inflow, where both sides are in this perfect, tense balance of pulling and yielding at the same time. Let's zoom in on this T state for a second because it's so important. This is not some lazy middle ground or a gray area. No, it's the point of maximum tension, where the contradiction itself is the main event. This state of intense dynamic balance is the wellspring of everything new. It's where creativity, consciousness, and real meaning are born from the struggle. So now for section 4, the algebra of action. We've got our players, we've got their states. Now let's talk about the algebra. And hey, don't let that word scare you. This is not complicated math, I promise. It's just a simple shorthand, a way to write down the story of what's happening in our tug of war. Okay, here's our first dynamic state. See that little dot in the middle? That just means and at the same time. That's it. So this little formula is just describing a situation where activity is actualized and rest is potentialized. To put that in plain English, it just means activity is on, and at the same time, rest is on standby. This is you, working hard, totally focused and productive. Activity is pulling that rope with all its might, and rest is just waiting in the wings. Pretty straightforward, right? Now let's just flip it. Let's look at the complete opposite. Here, rest is the one that's actualized, and activity is the one that's potentialized. The roles have totally switched. Or, to put it another way, rest is on, and at the same time, activity is on standby. This is deep sleep, or total relaxation. Rest is now the one pulling the rope, while the potential for you to get up and do something is being held in reserve. See, it's just a language for the flow of energy. And now, for the most incredible state of all, the one we've been building up to, the T state. In our language, it looks like this. Both activity and rest are in the T state. This is that amazing feeling of active rest. You know what I'm talking about when you're meditating or playing an instrument or just completely lost in a creative project. You're both totally active and completely at rest.
held in this perfect dynamic tension. This right here is where the magic happens.
So, okay, a fun little thought experiment. But you might be asking, why does any of this actually matter? And that brings us to our final and most important section, how meaning is made. Because this living algebra isn't just some abstract theory, it's a map. It's a way to see the invisible forces that create real human connection and value.
Let's use a real-world example, giving and receiving. A person who is giving is actualizing the act of giving, right? And at the same time, they're potentializing or putting on standby the act of receiving. The receiver is doing the exact opposite. Now, when these two people interact, their opposite forces don't just cancel each other out. Instead, the tension between them creates something entirely new, a shared T state. That's the moment of pure connection, of real understanding. It's from this balanced tension that things like trust and friendship are actually born. So here it is, the big takeaway. Meaning trust, love, these are not static things that you can just have or hold on to. They are processes. They are being actively, continuously generated from the beautiful, necessary contradictions in how we interact with each other. This whole framework, it finally gives us a language to see that amazing process in action. And that brings me to my final question for you. Now that you have this new lens to see through, think about it. What's the most important tug of war happening in your own world? Is it between your work and your personal life? Between logic and emotion? Between staying stable and embracing change? This living algebra gives you a brand new way to understand that beautiful struggle.